problem with a mission, vision, and a value that speaks to being great is that there's a really big challenge to that, and it's good. Good is the enemy of being great. And what we mean by that, and we've learned this everywhere we go, is that there is a lot of good in healthcare. We don't see a lot of things broken. We dig around in healthcare organizations all the time, and we don't find a lot of things broken. So what we're really trying to do in most organizations that we work with is move it from something that's already good and bump it up a notch to greatness. And the problem with that is that good can seem like good enough. And there sometimes isn't a lot of energy and excitement about changing things that aren't broken. You know, do you hear anyone say that? Is why are we changing this? Why are we fixing it? It's not broken. Leave it alone. Well, good in the definition of, you know, a mission for greatness is really not where you want to be. You want to be great. And so that can be the real challenge, is getting excitement around taking something that's good and changing it and bumping it up a notch to be great. But the reason this is so important is that your behavior and your community members' behaviors will change when the experience here goes from something that's good to something that's great. And what we also know is there's pockets of greatness everywhere in your organization. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist right now, but these pockets of greatness need to be wide sweeping and everywhere. Okay, and so sometimes it's not just creating greatness, it's about taking it where it's somewhere else and making sure it happens everywhere and consistently in the organization. But behavior changes when something moves from good to great. So for instance, we go to a new restaurant in town and it's good. We may or may not go there again. We may or may not recommend it to others, and we may or may not put a nice review or say good things about it in the community. If it's good. Normal human behavior, if something is good, is to behave, I may or may not, I might, and not really speak highly and be motivated to tell others about it. That's our response to good. And the same is true with healthcare. If it's good, you may or may not use that service again, you may or may not recommend it to others, and you may or may not talk positively about it in the experience in the community. It's good, yet you may not be loyal to it. But if it's great and you bump it up that notch, behavior changes. And that's what happened to our community. Why our services were able to grow like crazy and people started using their local healthcare again was because we bumped it up from good to great. And people will use it again, recommend it to others, and talk positively about it in the community. That is how we grew our local healthcare system and revitalized it, was bumping it up from good to great. What we also know is it takes high standards, not for mediocrity, but for greatness. It takes high standards. We like to say that it's a privilege, not a right, to work in healthcare. And with that privilege comes responsibilities to behave, to perform, and to contribute. And we must have high standards for how we behave, how we perform our jobs, and how we contribute to the organization's success. High standards. We've been doing some focus groups with your leaders and physicians and employees during our time here. And we asked them, what does it take to get to being great or wildly successful? And almost everything they mention involves behaviors. It involves behaviors. And so that's a very important of the journey, is to understand what are the high standards that we have for how we behave, how we perform our jobs, and how we contribute to the success of the organization.